The silver mist of Boston. Before we begin, find a comfortable position. Let your shoulders drop. Imagine the air around you cooling to a crisp autumnal chill. We are traveling back to the year 1875. The world is slower. There are no buzzing phones, no glowing screens, only the rhythmic ticking of a grandfather clock and the distant whistle of a steam engine. In the late 19th century, a person could board a train in the salty air of the Atlantic coast and, through a week of rhythmic iron clatter, wake up to the smell of the Pacific pines. This is the story of that journey, not a race, but a slow, majestic unfolding of a continent that was still whispering its secrets to those patient enough to listen. The morning in Boston, Massachusetts, began with a veil of silver mist rolling off the harbor. In 1875, Boston was a city of cobblestones and gaslight, a place where the scent of roasted coffee beans from the wharves mingled with the damp smell of the Atlantic Ocean. You are standing on the platform of the Old North Station. The locomotive sitting before you is a marvel of 19th century engineering, the 4-4- American type. Its name, the Evening Star, is etched in brass across its boiler. The brass is polished so highly that it reflects the orange glow of the rising sun. There is a gentle hiss of steam escaping from the valves, a sound like a giant cat purring in its sleep. You step on to the Pullman Palace Car. In the 1870s, these cars were the height of American luxury. George Pullman had envisioned a hotel on wheels, and as you walk inside, the world of the grimy industrial city fades away. The interior is lined with rich, dark black walnut wood. The seats are upholstered in deep crimson plush velvet. Above you, small kerosene lamps with etched glass globes cast a warm amber light that dances on the mahogany ceiling. As the conductor calls out a long melodic "all aboard," the train doesn't jerk. It begins to move with a slow, heavy grace. The iron wheels groan against the tracks, a deep metallic bass note that vibrates through the floor and into your feet. As we leave the city behind, the brick row houses of Boston give way to the rolling hills of Massachusetts. This is the land of the transcendentalists, the woods where Thoreau walked, and the meadows that inspired Emerson. The history here is etched into the stone walls that line the fields. These walls were built by hand, stone by stone, by farmers 100 years prior. The rhythm of the train becomes a heartbeat, chug-a-lug, chug-a-lug, chug-a-lug. It is a hypnotic sound. As you look out the window, the landscape begins to blur into a tapestry of greens and golds. We are heading west toward the great interior of the American heartland. By mid-afternoon, the train crosses the Hudson River. The water is a deep slate blue, reflecting the towering cliffs of the Palisades. In 1875, the Hudson was the gateway to the north. You see small sailboats, sloops with white canvas sails, gliding silently across the water, carrying grain and timber. The sight is peaceful, a snapshot of a time when wind and water were the primary masters of travel. Inside the carriage, the air smells of faint cigar smoke, expensive leather, and the wood-burning stove at the end of the car. A porter, dressed in a crisp navy blue uniform, moves down the aisle. He is lighting the lamps as the sun begins to dip below the horizon. The first day of our journey is drawing to a close. We have left the Atlantic behind. The Appalachians lie ahead, a mountain range so old that its peaks have been rounded by millions of years of wind, turning them into soft, rolling waves of earth. As you lean your head against the velvet headrest, the swaying of the train feels like a cradle. The click-clack of the rails is a metronome, counting down the miles of the vast American wilderness. Tonight, we sleep as the train climbs into the coal-rich heart of Pennsylvania. The stars above the mountains are brighter than any you have ever seen, free from the glare of city lights. They look like spilled diamonds on a velvet cloth. Close your eyes now and listen to the phantom whistle of the evening star echoing through the mountain passes. The journey has only just begun. The whispering woods of the Appalachians. The night has fully settled over the train car, a deep indigo blanket that softens the edges of the world. As the evening star moves deeper into Pennsylvania, the flat coastal plains are a distant memory. Now the earth begins to ripple and swell. We are entering the ancient heart of the Appalachian Mountains. In the 1870s, these mountains were a formidable barrier, a wall of dense timber and jagged rock that had challenged settlers for over a century. But for us, sitting in the velvet warmth of the Pullman car, the mountains are a silent audience to our passage. If you peer through the glass of the window, your own reflection stares back at you, superimposed over the dark shapes of towering hemlocks and white pines. Occasionally, the moon breaks through the cloud cover, illuminating the hollows, those deep, narrow valleys that the locals call hollers. In these pockets of the earth, the mist sits heavy and still, like a lake of milk. The locomotive is working harder now. You can hear it in the rhythm. The soft chug-a-lug has changed into a heavy, rhythmic thump, hiss, thump, hiss. The engine is digging in, its massive iron drive wheels gripping the steel rails as it ascends the Allegheny front. The sound is hypnotic, a deep mechanical breathing. It's the sound of power, but a controlled, steady power that lulls you into a state of total calm. Around midnight, the train approaches a true wonder of the 19th century world, the horseshoe curve. Even in the dark, the engineers and the porters speak of it with a sense of awe. Built near Altoona, Pennsylvania, this massive curve was carved out of the mountain with men with picks, shovels, and black powder. As the train rounds the bend, the tracks form a perfect U shape. If you look out the window now, you can see the front of your own train. The train's headlight, a massive oil-burning lamp with a silver reflector, casts a long golden beam into the darkness, cutting through the mountain mist. Occasionally, the sparks flying from the smokestack, tiny orange fireflies that dance for a second in the cold air before vanishing into the trees. It is a sight that few in history had seen before this era, to be in the middle of a train and see its head and its tail at the same time, curving like a great iron serpent through the wilderness. As we crest the summit, the air outside changes. It's crisper here, smelling of wet stone and coal smoke. This is the land of the black diamond coal. In 1875, these mountains were the engine room of America. The coal pulled from these dark tunnels would eventually melt the iron to build the skyscrapers of New York and the bridges of Chicago. But tonight, the industry feels far away. Inside the car, the wood-burning stove at the end of the aisle crackles softly. The heat it radiates is dry and comforting. The porter moves quietly through the cabin, his footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. He adjusts the silk shades on the lamps. He is preparing the upper berths. With a practiced click and a smooth motion, the mahogany panels above the seats fold down to reveal beds tucked away with crisp white linens and heavy wool blankets. The rocking of the train is different now that we are descending the western slope. It's a gentle side-to-side swaying, like a pendulum. It's the movement of a mother rocking a cradle. We are moving toward the Ohio River Valley. The ruggedness of the mountains is beginning to smooth out into the rolling foothills of the Midwest. The history here is thick. These are the lands where young George Washington once surveyed, where the Shawnee and the Iroquois moved through the forests like shadows, and where the first pioneers floated down the rivers on flatboats looking for a piece of the American dream. As you lie back and pull the heavy wool blanket up to your chin, the click-clack of the wheels becomes a whisper. Going west, going west, going west. The world is vast, the night is long, and the tracks are laid straight and true. The engine continues its steady heartbeat, pulling you through the dark, through the history of a growing nation, and toward the soft light of a new morning.
The industrial glow and the father of waters. The morning sun of the second day doesn't rise with a shout. It arrives as a soft amber glow filtering through the soot-dusted windows of the evening star. As you wake in your berth, the air inside the cabin is cool, but the heavy wool blankets have kept you in a cocoon of warmth. We have arrived in the gateway to the west, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In 1875, they called it the Iron City. As the train slows its pace, crossing a massive iron trestle bridge, you look out onto the confluence of three rivers, the Allegheny, the Monongahela, and the mighty Ohio. This is where the water turns into commerce. The sight is breathtaking in a way that belongs only to this era. Thousands of chimneys rise from the valley floor like a forest of brick. Even in the early morning, the Bessemer converters are at work, casting a strange, beautiful crimson light against the low-hanging clouds. It is the glow of a nation being forged. You see the puddlers and the ironworkers, tiny silhouettes against the fire, moving with the rhythmic grace of a dance they've practiced for a lifetime. But the train doesn't linger in the smoke. It pulls into the Union Station, a cathedral of glass and steam. There is a brief pause, a moment of stillness. You hear the clink-clink of a hammer against the wheels, a safety inspection that sounds like a distant bell. This is the heartbeat of 19th century maintenance, ensuring the iron stays true. As the train pulls away from Pittsburgh, heading out along the banks of the Ohio River, it's time for breakfast. You walk through the connecting vestibule, the cold morning air rushing between the cars for a split second before you enter the dining car. This is a place of white linen tablecloths, heavy silver forks, and delicate china embossed with the railroad's crest. The smell is intoxicating. Freshly ground coffee, thick-cut salt pork, and griddle cakes drizzled with dark maple syrup from the Vermont woods we passed the day before. You sit by the window as the Ohio River broadens beside you.
On the water, you see the last of the great stern-wheel steamboats, their giant red paddles churning the river into a white froth. They whistle at the train, a deep, melancholy hoo-ah, and our locomotive answers with a sharp, triumphant blast. The day carries us across the state of Ohio and into Indiana. The landscape is changing again. The rugged hills have smoothed out into the great interior. This is the American heartland. The forests of the east are thinning, replaced by vast, sprawling farmsteads. Every few miles you see a red barn and a white farmhouse surrounded by oceans of corn and wheat that sway in the wind. In 1875, this was the breadbasket of the world. The soil here is dark and rich, the color of chocolate, and the furrows in the fields seem to stretch on for eternity, perfectly straight lines drawn by a farmer's steady hand. The rhythm of the train is different here. On the flat plains, the engineer can let the evening star run. The click-clack speeds up, becoming a soothing, continuous purr. The telephone poles, still a relatively new sight, zip past like the teeth of a comb. As evening approaches on the second day, the sky begins to open up. In the Midwest, the sky is bigger than anywhere else. The sunset is a masterpiece of violet, gold, and bruised orange. There are no mountains to block the view, so you can see the sun sinking directly into the earth at the very edge of the world. And then, just as the first stars appear, we reach the great river, the Mississippi. To the people of 1875, crossing the Mississippi was a spiritual experience. It was the line between the settled East and the Wild West. We cross at St. Louis over the Eads Bridge, which had only been completed a year prior. It was the first bridge in the world to be built primarily of steel. As the wheels move slowly across the bridge, they make a hollow, echoing sound over the water. You look down into the dark, swirling depths of the Father of Waters. The Mississippi is a mile wide here, a silent, powerful force that carries the silt of half a continent. You see the lights of the St. Louis wharves, lanterns swinging on the decks of boats, the flickering campfires of travelers on the sandbars. Beyond this river lies the Great Plains. Beyond this river lies the territory of the buffalo and the tall grass prairie. The porter returns to your cabin. "We'll be in Missouri by midnight, ma'am, sir," he says softly. He turns down the oil lamp until it is just a tiny blue flame. The train enters the darkness of the Missouri night. The air is different now, drier, smelling of sage and dry earth. You are deep in the heart of the continent, cradled by the iron rails, moving toward the vast, silent horizon of the West.
The endless sea of grass and the song of the prairie. When you wake on the third morning, the world has undergone a radical transformation. Gone are the tight, claustrophobic forests of the East. Gone are the brick chimneys and the crowded riverbanks. You pull back the heavy velvet curtain of your berth and catch your breath, for as far as the eye can see, stretching to the very curve of the earth, there is only grass. In 1875, this was known as the Great American Desert, but to the eyes of a traveler, it looks like an emerald ocean. This is the tall grass prairie of Kansas and Nebraska. The grass here, the big blue stem, grows so high that it can hide a man on horseback. As the wind blows across the plains, the grass moves in long, shimmering waves, mimicking the currents of the sea we left behind. The evening star is a lonely speck in this vastness. There are no fences here yet, no paved roads, just the two gleaming lines of steel cutting through the sod. The air has changed. It is no longer damp and heavy with the scent of the ocean or the river. It is dry, thin, and smells of sun-baked earth and wild sage. If you step out onto the open-air platform at the back of the train, the wind rushes past you, a clean, ancient wind that has traveled 1,000 miles without hitting a single building. In the distance, you see a small, lonely shape on the horizon. As the train draws closer, it reveals itself to be a sod house, or a soddy. In 1875, timber was scarce on the plains. The homesteaders, families who had moved west under the Homestead Act, had to build their homes out of the very earth they walked on. They cut thick bricks of prairie sod, roots and all, and stacked them to make walls. You see a woman standing in the doorway, shielding her eyes from the sun with her hand, watching the train pass. To her, this train is a mechanical miracle, a link to a world she left behind. You see a small windmill nearby, its blades spinning lazily, pumping life-giving water from deep beneath the dry soil. It is a quiet, stoic kind of life. The silence of the plains is immense. It is a silence so deep that the whoo-whoo of the train whistle seems to be swallowed up by the sky the moment it leaves the engine. As the afternoon heat settles over the car, the rhythm of the journey slows. The passengers are quiet, lulled into a trance by the hypnotic repetition of the horizon. Then a murmur moves through the carriage. People point toward the south. Out on the plain, a dark, roiling cloud seems to be moving along the ground. But it isn't a storm. It is a herd of American bison. In 1875, the great herds were already beginning to dwindle, but thousands still roamed the plains. From the window, you see them, massive, shaggy giants with humped backs and low-slung heads. They move with a heavy, prehistoric dignity. The train engineer slows the locomotive, a sign of respect for the sheer mass of life crossing near the tracks. The sound of their hooves is a low rumble, a vibration you feel in your chest, blending with the vibration of the train. It is a glimpse into an older America, a world that existed long before the first rail was ever laid. As the sun begins to set, the prairie transforms again. Without the shadows of trees or mountains, the sunset lingers for hours. The sky turns a dusty rose, then a deep violet. The song of the prairie begins at dusk. It is the sound of the wind whispering through the dried stalks of grass, a sound the pioneers called the prairie whistle. It's joined by the distant, lonely yip of a coyote, a sound that defines the American West. Inside the Pullman car, the porter is lighting the lamps once more. The golden light reflects off the polished walnut walls. You feel a profound sense of peace. Out there, in the dark, is a wilderness so vast it makes human worries feel small and insignificant. The evening star is now climbing, almost imperceptibly, toward the high plains. The ground is becoming rockier, the air even thinner. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, you are balanced between the earth and the stars. The rocking of the train is your only constant in a world that seems to have no end. Tomorrow, the horizon will break. Tomorrow, we will see the shining mountains.
The granite giants and the continental divide. When you open your eyes on the fourth morning,
the world has tilted. The soft, rolling greens of the prairie have vanished, replaced by a landscape of rugged, vertical drama. You are in the heart of the Wyoming Territory. Looking out the window, the horizon is no longer a straight line. It is a jagged, teeth-like silhouette of granite and snow. These are the Rocky Mountains, what the early explorers called the Shining Mountains. Even in the height of summer, the highest peaks wear white caps of ancient ice, glistening like diamonds against a sky so blue it looks like polished turquoise. The evening star is now a tiny iron beetle crawling up the spine of the continent. The climb is steep. You can feel the change in your own body. The air is thinner now, crisp and sharp, carrying the scent of ponderosa pine and cold stone. The locomotive is laboring with every ounce of its mechanical soul. The exhaust from the smokestack comes in heavy, rhythmic blasts. Chuff, chuff, chuff. It is a slow, steady pulse, the sound of iron meeting the immovable will of the mountains. Around mid-morning, the train slows to a crawl as it approaches a true ghost of the Old West, the Dale Creek Crossing. In 1875, this was one of the most frightening and awe-inspiring sights on the entire Transcontinental Railroad. The train moves onto a spindly, spiderweb bridge of timber and iron, suspended 150 feet above a rocky gorge. As you look down from the window of the Pullman car, it feels as though you are floating in mid-air. The wind whistles through the wooden trestles, a low, haunting moan. The passengers hold their breath, and for a few minutes the only sound is the creaking of the bridge and the slow clack, clack of the wheels. It is a moment of pure, silent tension, followed by a collective sigh of relief as the wheels touch solid mountain soil once again. We are reaching the roof of the world. At a place called Sherman Summit, the train reaches its highest elevation. In 1875, this was the highest point of any railroad in the world. Here, the trees are stunted and windswept, bent into strange shapes by the constant gales of the high altitude. There is a monument here, a massive stone pyramid built in honor of the Ames brothers who helped fund the Union Pacific. It stands as a lonely sentinel in the wilderness, a reminder of the human ambition required to conquer this vertical world. And then we reach the most significant geographical marker of the journey, the Continental Divide. The train stops briefly at a small, weather-beaten station. There is a simple wooden sign that reads Continental Divide. To your left, every drop of rain that falls flows toward the Atlantic Ocean, back toward the world we left behind in Boston. To your right, every drop of rain flows toward the Pacific, toward the future, toward California. It is a place of balance. You step out onto the platform for a moment of mountain air. The silence is profound. There are no birds singing here, only the sound of the wind rushing over the granite peaks. It is a cold, clean silence that makes you feel both incredibly small and deeply connected to the earth. As the train begins its descent down the western slope, the landscape becomes a labyrinth of red rock canyons and high desert plateaus. We are entering Utah territory. The colors change from the grays and whites of the high peaks to vibrant oranges, deep ochres, and blood-red cliffs. These are the lands of the Castle Rocks, natural stone formations that look like the ruins of ancient European cathedrals, carved not by men, but by millions of years of wind and ice. Inside the car, the late afternoon sun pours in, turning the mahogany walls into a deep, glowing amber. The heat returns, but it is a dry, comfortable heat. The porter passes through, offering cool water from a silver pitcher. He tells stories of the Golden Spike ceremony at Promontory Summit, which happened just 6 years prior, in 1869. He speaks of the 2 steam engines, the Jupiter and the number 119, coming nose to nose as the final spike was driven, wedding the 2 halves of the continent together. As the sun sets behind the Wasatch Range, the shadows of the mountains stretch out for miles across the Great Salt Lake Desert. The lake itself appears on the horizon like a shimmering mirage, a vast sheet of silver water that reflects the stars before they even appear. Tonight, you sleep as the train glides across the salt flats, a world of white crust and ghostly stillness. The journey is nearly 3/4 done. The great barriers of the east and the center have been crossed. Only one more giant remains, the Sierra Nevada. Close your eyes and feel the train descend into the desert night. The rhythm is steady, the air is still, and the heart of the West is all around you.
The salt mirror and the Sierra wall. The morning of the 5th day arrives with a strange ethereal light. As you draw the curtain, you might think for a moment that the world has been covered in a fresh fall of snow. But the air is warm and the snow doesn't melt. You are crossing the Great Salt Lake Desert in the Utah Territory. This is one of the most surreal landscapes on the North American continent. For miles, the earth is a perfectly flat, blindingly white crust of alkali and salt. In the 1870s, this was a place of legends and nightmares for the wagon trains, but for you, in the safety of the Pullman car, it is a silent silver dream. The rising sun hits the salt crystals, creating a shimmering floor that reflects the sky like a mirror. There is a profound stillness here. Even the sound of the train seems muffled by the vast open emptiness. You see mirages on the horizon, ghostly images of mountains that aren't there, or lakes of water that vanish as the train draws closer. It is a place where the line between the earth and the heavens feels very thin. As the morning progresses, the white salt gives way to the dusty purples and grays of the Nevada desert. This is the land of the Great Basin. In 1875, Nevada was the heart of the American silver boom. As the train rolls through small, dusty outposts like Elko and Winnemucca, you see the remnants of the silver rush. Miners with weathered faces and wide-brimmed hats stand on the wooden platforms, their pack mules tied to hitching posts nearby. They are looking for the Comstock lode, the legendary vein of silver that was building the mansions of San Francisco. The scent outside is now dominated by sagebrush. It is a clean, sharp, medicinal smell that defines the high desert. It lingers in the air, mixing with the faint iron scent of the rails. But the real challenge, the giant, finally looms on the western horizon. The Sierra Nevada mountains rise up like a wall of dark granite. Unlike the Rockies, which we approached through long rolling foothills, the Sierras seem to jump straight out of the desert floor. These mountains are legendary for their beauty and their winter fury. The evening star prepares for its most difficult climb yet. The engineer hitches a second locomotive to the front of the train, a helper engine.
together the two iron beasts begin the ascent toward Donner Pass. As we climb, the desert heat vanishes, replaced by the cool shadows of the deep forest. We are surrounded by giants now, sugar pines and ponderosas that tower 100 feet into the air. Then the train enters the snow sheds. In 1875, these were considered a masterpiece of functional engineering. Because the Sierra winters could drop 40 feet of snow, the railroad built miles and miles of massive wooden tunnels over the tracks to keep them clear. As the train moves through them, the world turns into a rhythmic strobe light, darkness, then a flash of mountain scenery through the slats, then darkness again. Flash, dark, flash, dark, flash, dark. The sound inside the sheds is a deep, echoing roar, the voice of the locomotives trapped and magnified by the heavy timber beams. It's a rhythmic, hypnotic thunder that makes you feel the sheer scale of the mountain you are conquering. And then we reach Cape Horn. The train slows to a walking pace. You look out your window, and for a second your heart skips a beat. The track has been carved directly on the side of a sheer granite cliff. There is nothing between your window and the American River, 1,300 feet below in the canyon. The history here is written in the rock. This ledge was hand-carved by thousands of Chinese laborers who were lowered down the cliff face in wicker baskets to set charges of black powder. As you look down into the misty green depths of the canyon, you realize the immense human cost and courage it took to lay these tracks. The view is unparalleled. You can see the river winding like a silver thread through the trees below, and the blue ridges of the California foothills stretching out toward the sunset. As the sun dips below the final peak, the train begins its long, winding descent. We are leaving the high, thin air of the mountains and dropping down into the Sacramento Valley. The air is changing again. It's becoming soft, heavy, and sweet. You smell something you haven't smelled in 3,000 miles, the scent of blooming orange groves and damp, fertile earth. The Golden State is welcoming you. Tonight is your final night on the rails. The porters are extra quiet as they make the beds. There is a sense of accomplishment in the air. We have crossed a continent. We have seen the Atlantic mist, the Appalachian coal, the Mississippi mud, the prairie grass, the rocky granite, and the Sierra snow. As the evening star glides through the moonlit orchards of California, the click-clack of the wheels sounds like a satisfied sigh. Tomorrow we reach the end of the line. Tomorrow we meet the Pacific. The Golden Gate and the Pacific sunset. The final morning of our journey begins not with the harsh glare of the desert, but with a soft golden haze. As you wake for the last time to the gentle swaying of the evening star, the air flowing through the half-open window is different from any you've experienced so far. It is heavy with the scent of jasmine, damp earth, and a faint, unmistakable hint of salt. We are in the Sacramento Valley. In 1875, this was a land of staggering abundance. After the ruggedness of the mountains and the dryness of the Great Basin, the valley feels like a Mediterranean paradise. As the train glides past, you see miles of orchards, vibrant green leaves hiding ripening pears, peaches, and the deep purple of plums. In the distance, the Coast Range mountains are soft, velvet blue silhouettes against a sky that is clear and pale. The pace of the train has slowed. It's as if even the locomotive knows that the journey is coming to an end and wants to savor the final miles. By mid-morning, we reach Sacramento, the capital of California and the western terminus of the original Central Pacific Railroad. The station is a hive of activity. You see businessmen in linen suits, Chinese merchants in traditional silk robes, and sailors who have come upriver from the coast. The sounds of the city, the clatter of horse-drawn carriages on wooden planks, the ringing of bells, are a sign that we have returned to civilization. But the true end of the line lies further west, across the San Francisco Bay. The train continues toward Oakland. As we approach the coast, the legendary California fog begins to roll in. It's not like the silver mist of Boston. This is a thick, white blanket that smells of the deep ocean and cold currents. It creeps over the hills, swallowing the world in a quiet, damp embrace. The evening star finally comes to a halt at the Oakland Long Wharf. This massive wooden structure stretches 2 miles out into the San Francisco Bay. As you step off the wharf, your legs feel a bit heavy, the land sickness of a traveler who has spent a week on moving rails. The ground feels solid, but your body still expects the rhythmic click-clack of the tracks. You walk to the edge of the wharf. The water of the bay is a dark, churning green. To get to San Francisco, you must board a ferry. In 1875, these ferries were grand, white-painted vessels with huge side wheels that churned the water into foam. As the ferry pulls away from the wharf, you look back. The locomotive, the evening star, sits at the end of the pier, a small plume of steam rising from its stack. It has carried you 3,000 miles across the heart of a continent. It is a silent iron hero, resting now before it begins the long trek back toward the Atlantic. The ferry moves through the fog. Suddenly, the white veil parts, and there she is, San Francisco. In the 1970s, San Francisco was the Paris of the West. It was a city of vertical hills and Victorian mansions painted in every color of the rainbow. You see the masts of hundreds of ships, clippers from China, steamers from Panama, clogging the harbor. The air is alive with the sounds of foghorns and the distant rhythmic cling-cling of the newly invented cable cars climbing the steep streets. But you have one final destination. You hire a carriage, a small black brougham with leather seats, and ask the driver to take you west through the Presidio all the way to the edge of the world. The carriage moves slowly through the cypress trees and the sand dunes of the outer Richmond district. The sound of the city fades away. It is replaced by a deep, rhythmic roar, a sound more ancient and more powerful than any locomotive. The carriage stops. You step out onto the cliffs near the Cliff House. Before you lies the Pacific Ocean. The sun is beginning its final descent. In the west, the sun doesn't just set, it seems to melt into the sea. The water is a deep, bruised purple, and the white foam of the breakers glows like fire in the twilight. To your right is the Golden Gate, not a bridge yet, but a narrow, treacherous strait where the waters of the bay meet the raw power of the ocean. The fog is pouring through the gate like a silent waterfall. You stand there, a traveler who has crossed an entire nation. You started in the Atlantic mist, climbed the oldest mountains on earth, crossed the father of waters, felt the wind of the great plains, touched the granite roof of the world, and survived the desert salt. And now there is nowhere left to go. The iron rails have done their job. As the last sliver of the sun vanishes beneath the horizon, a profound peace settles over you. The journey is over. The continent has been bridged. The silence of the Pacific is the final note in the long, beautiful song of the American West. The world is quiet. The stars begin to appear over the ocean. You can finally rest.